Hello, welcome to week 3 of the Wellbeing series. My name's Ione Hurrell. I am the founder and lead coach at the Thinking Academy, which provides coaching solutions for schools, both coaching training to develop coaching techniques for staff, but also executive coaching for senior leaders, head teachers, and CEOs. What I'm going to be talking about today is how to develop your emotional literacy and emotional agility so that you can improve your well-being. This is part of a 6-week series where we've looked at things like the change curve and the neuroscience of thinking, and we will be looking into ways of well-being, how to manage feeling overwhelmed, and the importance of self-compassion. But for today, we're really going to focus in on our emotional ability to be emotionally literate, and also how we can develop a positive mindset through managing our emotions really effectively. We're going to be specifically looking at the work of Susan David, who believes that the way we perceive ourselves and think about ourselves really determines how we live our lives, and that actually to be agile with our emotions means that we're able to transform ourselves positively and make the right choices around our decisions and behaviours that can have a really positive impact on our lives. It's been shown that actually our emotional intelligence, or our EQ, is hugely important in determining our success at achieving personal and professional goals, but also important for our physical health. If we're able to manage negative emotions or the things like stress, then it improves our well-being, both physically and mentally. And it also increases stronger relationships with people because we have a better understanding of our emotions and can empathise with other people's. So let's talk a little bit about emotions. There are probably 2 things we need to know before we begin. One is that emotions are obviously and quite often perceived to be very positive or negative. And sometimes I find myself falling into the trap of saying that. But emotions are actually pieces of information that are given to us. So they are quite neutral. They're there really to act as a compass in decision making and guide us into the correct action. And it's really important to understand that. Quite often we think about them as positive and negative because if we take, for example, let's take joy as an emotion and sadness, we'd obviously all prefer to feel joyful rather than sadness. But joy in its element is experiencing something we care about, and sadness is actually losing something we care about. So they are both sides of the same need. They're both providing us with information to identify things that we care about and that are important to us. So it's good if we can start taking away some of the negative and positive connotations to do with emotions and actually see them for what they are. They are useful for providing us with information. The second part to understand about emotions is really that they are transitory. The word emotion comes from the Latin energy in motion, so emotion. And it's really important to understand that emotions come and go at different levels and different degrees of experience, but they do pass, and that's really important for us to understand. Some of the issues we have around emotions is when we hook into them and get really caught up around specific emotions and hold on to being angry or having to feel joy all the time. And when we get really hooked into them, they can have a negative impact on our well-being. So I want to really start off with being emotionally literate. Now, I think we would all like to think that we are able to name our emotions, but actually the research coming out of Harvard says that only 36% of us are actually good at naming our specific emotion that we're feeling. And this is really important because it's vital really that we are able to identify and label our emotions correctly. They are giving us pieces of information. So if we misunderstand an emotion and we name it something incorrectly and we don't get it right, then our actions and behaviours won't be acting and behaving in the right way to manage what information we've been given. And this is where we can make some really big mistakes and big errors in the way we choose to behave and the way we choose to feel. So we're going to look at the work of Robert Plutchik, who has identified 8 core emotions But he's also, in his diagram, identified all the other emotions that sit beneath those core emotions at different levels and degree of feelings. But there are actually 34,000 different emotions that we experience at different levels, which is why it's so important that we are able to identify those and label those and name those emotions correctly. So the core 8 emotions that Robert Plutchik identified are joy, surprise, fear, sadness, trust, disgust, anticipation, and anger. Those are the core ones, but you can see from his diagram there are lots underneath that. And this is really important if we're going to be able to manage our emotions correctly and to use the information that they give us in the correct way. Susan David is a doctor and professor at Harvard University, and she's been working in the field of psychology and emotion for a significant number of years. And she's developed a 4-stage process to help us become emotionally literate and emotionally agile so we can transform. The first stage is called showing up. And this is about really identifying and recognizing and accepting our emotions as they appear. So it's okay to feel these things. And it's really important at this stage to be able to name and label those emotions correctly. I like to think of it as having shelves in your mind, and those shelves have got thoughts and emotions on. And whenever we're feeling something, it's really important to pick that box off the shelf that's labeled anger or sadness or joy and have a good look inside it to really understand what that anger is and where it's coming from, or what that joy is and where it's coming from, so we can make the informed choices in our actions and behaviours. For example, if I'm in a meeting and I might notice I'm feeling angry, I need to have a good look in that box of anger and see what it is. Is it frustration that I haven't come prepared or I don't know enough? Is it disappointment in somebody else's actions? But you can see there are lots of emotions that can sit beneath that. And our reactions to those emotions could be very different. The way I choose to respond when I'm feeling angry is very different to if I'm feeling disappointed in myself, or disappointed in somebody else, or frustrated. So we need to really unpick that and understand it. And this kind of feeds into stage 2 of Susan David's work, where she specifically looks at the next phase, which is stepping out. Because if we're going to be objective, it's important we understand that we are not our emotions, that they are there to give us information. So we become much more autonomous and objective about what's happening for us. So when we step out, pick up the emotion in the box and have a look in, it's not us we're looking at, it's the emotion really objectively, and to understand exactly what it is so that we can choose to act upon it or we can choose to let it go. And there's a wonderful woman called Byron Katie from Australia who's done some really good questions to help unhook ourselves from these thoughts and unhook ourselves from feelings, so we can deal with them more objectively. And the first question is like 4 stages of questions that you can ask yourself to unhook and let go of some thoughts and behaviours. The first question is it true? So sometimes when we pick an emotion or a thought that we're feeling, maybe it's that we're not feeling good enough, and we have a look at it, we should ask ourselves if it's true. Now, in last week's series, I talked about how strong emotions are. And so often, if we ask ourselves, is it true that I'm not good enough? Our first reaction will be yes. Which is why the second question Byron Katie asks is it really true? So we can dig beneath that. And quite often when we dig a little bit deeper, we discover that it's not really true. And then her third question is really important. Well, what happens if we believe that thought or that emotion? How are our thoughts and actions and behaviours when we believe that to be true? For example, if I don't think I'm good enough, what are my actions and behaviours going to be like? Well, I might be withdrawn because I don't want to put myself forward. I might be disappointed in myself. I might have low self-esteem. I might demonstrate jealousy or anger towards people that I think are better than me. So it can have really negative connotations. And then the fourth question is hugely powerful for letting go and choosing a different path of emotion. So letting that energy move on to something much more positive. And her final question is, who would you be without that thought? And so if I'm feeling not good enough and I let that thought go and I feel good enough, what happens? And if I feel good enough, I feel confident, more in control, more capable, more able to see opportunities and do the things that I want to do. So you can see how powerful those questions are for helping shift some thinking or some emotions that you might find yourself hooked into or caught up with. But it's good to identify them and step away from them. Sometimes it's useful to use language that separates it. So instead of I am angry, which associates it with yourself, you can say, I'm noticing that I'm feeling angry, or I'm noticing that I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough, because it separates it from you and allows you that objectivity to deal with it appropriately. And thirdly, the next stage is about core values, living our why, really understanding what our foundation block is that we stand upon, what we really truly believe in, what do we really want and value in our lives. These aren't put upon us by somebody else. These aren't things we think we should do. These are things we truly believe in. And it's really important to know your values strongly enough that actually then you can understand why you feel a certain way. And indeed, they guide you into making the right choices and point you in the right direction, the right actions to take. You know, if you value making a difference, then you can understand and get frustrated with inequality and understand where that frustrations come from and know that you will make the right decision that means everyone, you are making a difference to everyone and it is fair and equitable. So having your core values is really key. So spending time thinking about what's really important to you can help speed up decision making and help you deal with those emotions much quicker and much more effectively. And finally, the next one is about making small steps, making tweaks, changes. Whenever we think about fundamental big things that we've experienced in our lives, we haven't done it all at once. Let's take reading, for example. You don't read straight away. First of all, you understand the phonetics of letters, and then you understand how they go together to make words, and then you understand how to read, and then inference. And you build up reading skills that way. It's the same with if I was going to do something major, like run a marathon. Running a marathon doesn't start by running a marathon. No, it starts by taking the first few steps on a simple walk or jog to build up the stamina, and it helps with simple changes in how we choose to eat. So what Susan Davies advocates is that we just make small tweaks and changes when we identify what's really going on with an emotion. Let's take that element of I'm feeling really angry and I'm disappointed. I've identified that actually that's disappointed in myself, that I've been unprepared for a meeting. Well, we've really understood that emotion and labelled it correctly. So then the action we take can be quite small. It might be as simple as, well, next time I'm going to make sure that I've read the notes before I appear. Or next time I'm going to make sure that I've had a conversation so I've got the information that I need beforehand. So it can put us on a very positive, action-based trajectory that impacts positively on our well-being because we feel we're able to control and act upon things in order to make things better. So that's how we become much more emotionally agile. So the key things really to understand about our emotional literacy and the things you might want to take away with you today are firstly, that emotions are transitory, that they move, that they're giving us signals for a bit of information, that we should really pull the emotion or the thought off that shelf and have a really good look at it. Questioning it using the works by Byron Katie, or just having a look and seeing what really is happening, what we're really feeling, and what actions we need to take based on our value system, what small steps can we take towards that significant change? So we don't feel overwhelmed with having to change everything, but we feel the possibility that we can shift and change to improve our lives and to improve how we feel, how we choose to feel. So I hope that's been useful for you today. If there's anything I can really specifically leave you with, it is by when you're feeling something, just unpicking it a little bit more to understand what's really happening for you, so that the action you could take can be the right one to have a positive outcome for you. If you want to talk about your value systems and how you can develop your value systems, I have a document that helps people identify their values, which I'm more than willing to share with you. So you can connect with me at leonie@thethinkingacademy.co.uk, and I can send you the document so you can discover more about your value system. Or you can book a coaching session with me and we can explore that in much more depth. You can connect with me on Twitter and give me some feedback on Twitter. But it would be lovely to hear if you're finding the videos of use to your thinking. And I look forward to seeing you next week when we're going to look at the 5 ways of well-being, how we can maintain our emotional and physical well-being. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.